SDRs are cooked. All they do are tracking lambless sequences and hey-reach sequences. I don't think that's a valuable skill. It's not even that the AI is going to replace them, the agencies replace them, because one SDR in an agency can handle multiple companies. I did that job and it's just a waste of time, especially waste of sales brain. I had 16 people in a bar at my first meetup. I told them it's a birthday party, so they didn't charge me anything.
Welcome back to another episode of the SDR Hire Podcast. And if you are new here, my name is Stefan. And all we talk about here is how to do proper sales, how to break into tech sales in particular, how to win and how to land exceptional roles in the sales and tech sales space. And I have a very exceptional guest for today. His name is Leo Leonard Eldić. He's the founder and the driving force behind one of the biggest events in Europe called SaaStanak. Leo started out in the SaaS trenches. So he went from sales development, account executive, all the way to, and by the way, he was a part of companies like Microsoft and ChartMogul, where he was doing, up until where he was doing SaaS M&A. And along the way, he learned what it actually moves the needle in SaaS, which is relationships, real talk, network, and community. And so 4 years ago, he hosted a very small meetup, 16 people showed up, and that one night changed everything. So fast forward to today, he's had more than 40 events in 15 cities, nearly 3,000 attendees, and obviously lifelong connections. This is how him and I got to connect as well. And please welcome Leonard Eldić. Leo, he's a community architect, a SaaS connector, and the brilliant mind and executor behind SaaStanak. Welcome, dude.
Thank you, Stefan, and thanks for all the kind words. I didn't really think about community architect as a thing, but I'm definitely going to steal that one.
You can thank ChatGPT for that. All right, man. Look, this is way overdue. I wanted to do this for some time, and let's just kick off with. I think it's very interesting the way that you even got to the idea of launching SaaStanak, because I think that there's not a shortage of events in the SaaS space, in the tech space. And how did it happen that a guy who was like an SDR and account executive turned into an event company owner? And like, how did SaaStanak actually come to be?
Yeah, it's not a very weird story. Rather, like all other event organizers I know, not all of them, but a lot of them started as salespeople. If Alex Thelma from SaaStanak was a sales guy as well, Jason Lincoln in his early days, also a sales guy. I think this is a very recurring trend where you as a salesperson are exposed to a lot of events. So you have this vision of what's actually happening in the event space. And then you figure, okay, I have an angle of my own. And that's how it came about with SaaStanak. Original idea was for me to have a sales channel. To be honest, I was selling ChartMogul back then. I was an account executive. Actually, I think at that point I was an SDR still. And I wanted to meet people in Zagreb in general, first of all, because it's a remote role. So I didn't really have a lot of touch with people that are doing same things as I do. Like, for example, Stefan, I guess before this podcast, I don't know how many people in Serbia knew doing this. And now it seems like it's a lot of interesting SDRs and AEs. And that was my experience where I just uncovered a group of people that I previously didn't know by doing this meetup. Although my, let's say, motivation in the beginning was to get some kind of leads or actually get in touch with SaaS founders, I kind of quickly fell in love with it, and it became a passion project. And then from there it grew. I always wanted, in my past roles, I also sold CAD software. So I was basically selling a competitor to AutoCAD. It's the software called Outbound, which is a German one. And I was working for this distributor company out of Zagreb that basically was a distributor for all of ex-Yugoslavia. So my job was hop from one engineering conference to another in the region. And I spent a lot of time in Belgrade, in Sarajevo, in Novi Sad, in Skopje as well. And that was a very interesting experience. So my first intention with SaaStanak when I liked the meetup was, okay, when's the next one in Belgrade? So that was my excuse to hop in my car and get to Belgrade. And then it became a reachable community very fast. Generally, the model, and maybe let's say something that might be interesting to the viewers and people who want to do the same, is I partnered with companies. Like the biggest problem that you have as an event organizer is there's a lot of incurred costs. So one of the biggest costs are venues. And generally, SaaS companies have offices. So basically, I married the two. We can do an event in your office. And then the tricky part was like how to convince someone that you doing an event in their office is better than them doing the same event. And obviously that's a big problem, but the more you do them, the bigger brand you have, and then the more audience can you capture, and it becomes as a staple thing. A company hosting a SaaStanak event in Zagreb or in Belgrade also gets all of the secondary benefits from our brand. And in the beginning, it was like me pleading people, please, let's organize this event in your offices. But very quickly, it became something that we get a lot of inbound requests from. So right now, at this moment, we have a calendar full until the conference. And then after the conference, we basically do another 6 months. And then from there, it basically grew to, I decided, okay, we have 800 people on our email list. And I decided to organize a conference. And that was the first year in Zagreb in 2024. And then we moved the conference to Šibenik, to the coast of Croatia in 2025. And we're staying there for the 2026 edition.
I can't wait. I can't wait. Honestly, I can't wait. And to your point about like SaaS event founders being former sales guys, I had Jared Robin from Rev Genius also on the podcast. It was a couple of years ago. And very similarly, right? He saw a huge gap in the market where a lot of people were not supported with the needed knowledge for the SaaS industry, specifically in sales. He started with sales and then it grew. I think SaaStanak initially was something very similar. And then you actually touched upon a topic that I'm very passionate about, because selling into the event space or selling on behalf of an event business is it's a growing niche. And a lot of listeners, as I can presume, are also either a part of an event company trying to grow, maybe sell tickets. And that's something like I've even had for my own agency, I've had people come to me like, hey, can you help me sell tickets? And so it's, how do you guys do it? Obviously, you have a brand now and you have a lot of inbound coming in, but what does that business development side of things look like? Do you still cold call? Do you still send out cold DMs and emails? Do you have a team of SDRs? What does that actually look like for you guys?
Yeah, when it comes to the sales part, let's first move it to decide like how the revenue makeup of an event actually looks like. So about 60% of the revenue we earn for the event is sponsorships. 40% comes from the ticket sales. Mm-hmm. So essentially both parts are super important. And especially on the ticket side, what you generally want is like high value attendees buying tickets so your sponsors are happy. Right now at this moment, there is a like huge inflation of events, so people's attention is scattered. And I generally think, especially when I started SaaStanak, there was already a lot of SaaS events out there, much bigger ones. So we had to choose a lane, and we initially chose this lane of catering to Central and Eastern European founders and operators. And this is where we are right now. But still, on the, let's say, ticket side, it's hard to promote because a lot of speakers which you rely on promotion are also speaking on other events as well. So it's hard to find a very tangible moat. That's part of the reason why we moved the conference to the coast and to become a destination conference in Europe, is because if we can offer something more than that, an experience that is worth the visit, which is different from a trade show, then we have a different moat and different audience that we can target. So on that side, we can talk about more about that because it's very interesting. A lot of learnings about doing a destination conference as opposed to conference in a big city. But generally, what sales looks like for events, and I cannot say I'm a master of that because I handle all of the sales myself right now with help with a couple of contractors. But generally what it looks like is a lot of relationship-based sales. So I go to other events where I meet people, meet sponsors that are happy with us, introduce us to other vendors, especially like it becomes something as a good activity for them because they get co-sponsored, rather like they create a side event, so they need co-sponsors for it and they split the costs. So for us, it's a very reliable channel where, for me, I generally think like as long as we can amaze at the main event, people will spread the word. And naturally those that want to sponsor and capture this audience will reach out to us. So our inbound is pretty strong. When it comes to outbound, like I wouldn't say I'm the best cold caller or a person that is doing inbound outbound, because I've like my past roles were, especially like Charmol was pure inbound, SaaS Group was a mix, but there is this direct outreach that I do mainly on LinkedIn, and it's usually very organized around which content do I publish and who actually engages with it. And also like when I see other people's content that is thematically related to what I'm offering. So if anyone is talking about, for example, key points about SaaStanak is like this non-transactional networking, in general, like a retreat style event, then these are people that I want to talk to. If anyone is bashing trade shows for like below booth attendance, stuff like that, these are people I want to talk to. And generally, this positioning argument usually comes a lot into play, because in essence, people want to sponsor events. I think events are more important than ever, and they're becoming a more reliable channel compared to everything else, because it used to be in the past, like you could also rely a lot on SEO or different types of inbound. Now you have to go outbound, and people do GTM engineering with Clay and other tools, but a lot of people are also relying on events to do the same. I don't know where I was going with this, but generally our revenue model relies a bit on outbound, bit on inbound, and it's mostly handled by me and a couple of contractors that I have that usually play out in different cities across Europe as well. These are also referral type, let's say, arrangements, where when we do a meetup in a different city, for example, we did one in Brno in Czech Republic a couple of months ago. We usually try to find local partners who want to host that or have certain incentive of working with us, and then through them usually meet people. So it's very old school, entirely scalable, but definitely something that keeps people that are engaged in the event to stay with us, because we kind of acquire them in a very natural way. And a lot of these deals are bespoke deals, different types of brand deals, and like different types of activations at the conference, which usually involved, hey, I'm interested in these types of companies, and us as our conference organizers know who's coming. We generally try to set up situations where these people can meet those people. So that's a long-winded answer to say that we don't have any system. It's only me. I'm kidding. But it's not a very organized system, so no help on that side. On the ticket sales side, we've never used any pure outbound services or something like that. We did a little bit of outbound to targeted people that we think should attend the event. But generally, we have a good enough demand in itself, and especially the meetups help, because there's always something to talk about. And our list only grows with the meetups. So our newsletter kind of sells 90% of the tickets. So we don't really need to do like this targeted outbound. Doesn't mean we won't do it, but generally we don't need to do it.
That's very interesting. Obviously, I think that on a certain level, you guys are a media business, right? And so in that sense, that's how you generate demand, through demand generation strategies that media businesses have, which is usually, just like you mentioned, newsletter, some marketing plays, network, relationship sales, etc. I was just curious whether you guys have a lane that you've potentially tried out. I've never actually, I think I was in a couple of conversations, but I've never tried to do like ticket sales through outbound. I guess it would work, but then on the other hand, I don't know, it would have to be a brainstorming session how to do it. Anyway, but still, you say that there's no like structured process, but it's not really how it sounds to me, because you do have a structured process. Maybe it's not completely streamlined, but there's a newsletter that is like completely satisfying the demand, almost completely. I know that you are connected with smaller communities, for example, like mine, like some other people who promote the conference ourselves. And then obviously I know that at least from this year, you've got plenty of inbound demand from like speakers and sponsors. So the brand has grown, and it took you like maybe a couple of years to get to the level where too long, I bet. Can you talk about a little bit like about the early days? And because if I recall correctly, you and I had a chat about this at some point. I think that you quit your job as an account executive and essentially went all into this. And I can just assume how potentially stressful it was, and like cash constraint and trying to pull everything. How was it? Like, can you share something about that?
Yeah, sure. I was working at SaaS Group, and our first conference came about. And my manager back then, Dirk, he's a great lad. And at the conference, there was Dirk and a couple of other people from SaaS Group. And later we had these chats, and he said, "It seems like you enjoy doing this more than you enjoy working at SaaS Group." I was like, it is like that, but yeah. And then that kind of led to us me departing the company. I still stayed in a little bit of a kind of a referral role, and that helped to bridge the gap a little bit until the next conference came about. But generally, yeah, like events are super cash flow constrained and stressful businesses where you manage things on the go. I always start event planning with the parties, and then months before the event, when I get a real picture of budget, I just start scratching things like, oh, we're not going to have guys spitting fire or something like that. So you do these things on the go, and I'm still learning how to do it right. But generally, this process of getting to this first event, I think if people knew how many hours spent on minuscule details and effort spent in events, they would be a little bit less harsh on event organizers. Because I know there are events that suck, of course, but generally, even those that suck, there is a lot of behind the scenes work that you don't necessarily see, and a lot of commitments by the organizer to perform on the vendor side and on the sponsor side, where these things become your priority more than attendee experience. I'm facing that, let's say, challenge myself, where I want to basically provide a really good experience to the attendees. So we hosted in a vacation resort. You get lunch, coffee breaks, all included. A lot of stuff like amenities that you generally don't have at conferences, you have at SaaStanak, for a good reason, where I know if people are relaxed, fed, and actually happy, the whole vibe of the conference will be better. And that generally helps you to have better conversations, and people would be happier with it, regardless who they have chats with. So I know these things make sense, but when I see them in P&L, I'm like, oh, this costs a lot of money. So for us, if I give out a ticket, it essentially cost us 150 euros. And that's not accounting, for example, if we give out 300 people tickets, we need a bigger screen. So for that, main stage, just to have that screen ready, that's 12,000 euros. So if you want a bigger screen, that's 32 square meters. If you want a little bit bigger than that, that costs a couple K. So thinking through that, although there are people you want to invite or you want to, for sure have there, it's hard to make sure that a certain person will be there at the same time. And on the other hand, some sponsors do require you to do that. They need a certain profile. So you're basically a one-man marketplace trying to satisfy demand. And on the other side, it's hard to think through this whole event while you don't have nothing. So at the beginnings, especially as ticket sales, most of the ticket sales happens 60 to 30 days before the event. So that's when the line starts going up, and then 30 days to 0 day, or rather the event day, is where you actually get a full picture of how many people will attend. You're having these promises in advance that you're hoping to keep, right? And so far so good. Knock on wood, we've managed to deliver on every promise we had, but it's also on you to not overpromise. On the other hand, also become a real partner to both your attendees and vendors. So this, let's say, process at the start, if I come back to what you asked me, this process at the start is super confusing, and I've had to learn through both good and bad examples of how to deal with people, both on the attendee and the sponsor side, to actually make the event make sense. Because not everyone comes to the event with the same expectation or with the same goals. And on the other hand, you can produce only so many things in this couple of days of the event. So prioritizing stuff is super hard. I don't know if that answers your question, actually.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. Because the more I can get you talking, the better. But one thing that kind of comes to mind is you've grown this literally from zero, from nothing, into a very comprehensive event. And so what are the numbers right now, in the sense of how many people are attending, how many events have you even had, what's the scope of the event itself?
Yeah, at this point, I always have to remind myself or remember what's the exact number of events, but I think I had a post a month or two ago that it was like around 60 or 70 events so far, which are like meetup style, and then 2 big conferences in these past 4 years. And it's not evenly distributed. So like we did in last year only, I think we did around 18 events or something like that. So things are basically only getting faster in terms of organizing these events. So I fully expect to have us like at 20, 30 events a year, maybe even this year. When it comes to like attendee count, like we are for meetups, we average around 50 to 60 people per meetup. Those are open meetups. Like founder forums are closed, so usually those are like smaller groups of 15 to 20 people. And then the conference itself, this year we hosted 300 people. Basically, when I started announcing SaaStanak 2025, I put a headline number of 600, which was when I mentioned the difference between destination and a city conference. This is where I estimated completely wrong, because getting 300 people to travel somewhere, especially a destination like that, Šibenik is not known for a SaaS hub or something like that. It's totally different than hosting it in Zagreb or Belgrade. Initially, like the first conference had 300 attendees, and then second conference actually didn't grow in attendee count. But what happened was we got higher profile. So we got like a VP, CEO level people and founder level people more, because for them, the financial and travel commitment was more worth the time. It was interesting. It definitely screwed up my budget planning, but we managed to make it in the end. Like I remember 3 weeks before the event, I sold like 60K in sponsorships, and that's what saved my ass. So things like that happen, and it's a little bit of a risky bet, but I'm super glad that we did that push. And I think like in revenue side, the company will do around 230K in revenue in 2025, and we're gunning for 500 in 2026.
That's impressive, man. That's impressive. And I appreciate you for sharing all of the numbers. This is really cool.
It's public data. Anyone can.
No, but still, it's very interesting to do the math and look at everything. And I know that events are extremely cash constrained, and you essentially make or break the whole project literally on the day. And so it really is stressful to launch something like that. And it's really impressive to watch. I've been a part of, let's say, a broader community around SaaStanak for the past couple of years. And it's just beautiful to see. I think that you're right, that definitely the type of people, like the level of the people who have shown to the conferences and even the meetups has grown, right? And I think you guys are doing an amazing job. But I would like to challenge you here just for a second. If you had no brand, you had no network, no connections, how would you launch an event of this magnitude right now?
I wouldn't start with an event of this magnitude as of my first go, right? I think you need to start with targeted meetups, or it can also come from the sponsor side. Like if you're an experienced event organizer and an industry insider, you can go through sponsors, or rather pick a big company that you can work with and then create an event for them, try to retain the brand, and then from that brand build out a conference. That's one way. I think the other way is actually building out your own personal brand, so you have people going to you. But I wouldn't suggest to anyone that doesn't have any audience to create an event from scratch, or at least take a financial commitment like we do on that size. I generally think, especially if we're looking at SDRs and AEs, let's say, and I had a post like 2 days ago, anyone can be a host. I think like generally being a host gives you the best privilege you can have in a room, because you can be absolutely nobody, but you're the guy who offered the drinks. So I think this is a superpower that doesn't really cost that much. If you can organize something and be the guy who, or girl who actually did the effort of putting together a group, you already get a privilege to talk with everyone in the group. And I wish people did it more. I think like in private life also, like you see this decline of people inviting people to dinners and stuff like that, which is pretty sad. I think like generally me and my fiance, we host our friends for dinner or something like that, like every month. And I think this is something that kind of retains relationships. You create this, let's say, what Americans like to call, I think, third room or third space, where people can mingle together, and like people who are maybe not acquainted to each other can meet. And this is something that you can do tomorrow. Like, I don't think it takes a lot. I had 16 people in a bar at my first meetup, We got, I think, 200 euro sponsorship from Chartmogul. I spent it all on Rakia, and it was a great event. I remember it to this day. People who I met there are some people that I still today have, like, they're business partners, they're colleagues, they're attendees of our conference. And this is something that, like, it wouldn't happen if I hadn't had a will to actually organize, call it SaaStanak, and book a bar. I told them it's a birthday party, so they didn't charge me anything.
Yeah, that's interesting. So what do you think would be, like, what would somebody achieve by doing something like that? Just networking, or do you think that there should be a strategy behind like that networking effort, trying to, just you maybe started trying to sell more of whatever it is that you're selling? Does it have to be something with an intent behind, or just for the sake of networking?
It's even better if it's no intent. I joke around about this, me wanting to sell to people, but I ended up not even mentioning me selling Charmo or something like that, other than them being the sponsor of the evening. Generally, people recognize good intent. And I think if you have a natural tendency towards liking people and hearing people out, you're going to be great at it. And I feel like sometimes I'm invited to this event when it feels like it's a setup. Someone's going to come to you and sell to you something, or like they want you to do something. And that's not a great feeling. I think generally you want to have this feeling of being welcomed into a community, inviting community that actually wants to talk about something that you like, or rather just hear you out. And you are also the person that can hear out others. That's why it's challenging to create founder communities, because founders are essentially a lot of times bad listeners. So they're not very open to creating these bonds between each other.
That's fair to say. And yeah, I agree with you. Like, not having any intent behind just throwing a party or getting people together is, I feel like it's the best thing. I did a couple of like founder meetups here in Belgrade just for the sake of being surrounded by other people who are trying to do the same things as I am. And it really felt good. And they were like, so like, when's the pitch gonna arrive? And I was like, there's no pitch. Like, you can give me money if you want. There's no pitch. But look, you've spent the last 4 years doing this, and SaaS has changed so much, and has even increased the speed of change over the last couple of years with AI. So what are some, I don't know, insights or things that you've observed have changed over the last 4 years, and where do you see like the biggest change coming from for the SaaS as a whole?
Yeah, the biggest change is SaaS is not sexy anymore. No, in all honesty, like, things changed a lot with the AI, and at first it wasn't really clear like how is it going to play out, and still it isn't. But I think, like, right now we have the old school SaaS point solutions, or like bigger systems like ERP, CRMs, etc. And then we have these agentic solutions, which mainly avoid being called SaaS, like they're being called AI companies, although that's a misnomer as well. When, for example, Anthropic is an AI company, you're still a solution and you're billing on a monthly charge. So, like, it's a SaaS business, but doesn't matter. I think these are semantics. And I think what happened around, even in these past few weeks, you can see the bloodbath on public stock markets on the SaaS names, is that people are rethinking these custom service development or software development and SaaS. SaaS came in basically as a replacement to custom software development. So instead of hiring a software agency to create a solution for you, you could pay $10 and have or $10 per seat or whatever, and have the solution ready. So you kind of adjust it to the solution. It might not be your exact workflow, but it's cheap enough and scalable, and you don't have any overhead costs of maintaining it as compared to the custom software development. Now I think like pendulum is switching back to a little bit back to custom software development, although like all the AI products will say no, we're not, we're a solution. There is a lot of tinkering with these products. Like, you actually need to either you taking time to manage these solutions, or hiring someone to actually do that for you. That's why the rise of clay agencies, for example, is for me like the biggest indicator of what's to come. There is a whole ecosystem of people who are using clay for their customers, because it's becomes like a value prop. Like it's actually for Clay, in essence, it's an interesting like value prop where in past you wanted to say everything you can say to avoid like having someone hiring a third party would be a benefit for you. Now like you can say, oh, we have an ecosystem of partners that can do this for you. And it used to be like it's not the best thing. Like you want to hire a third party to manage your whatever software you bought. That seems like it's not the best thing, but now people prefer that route. And I think this changed with AI because people expect complexity from these tools. And as opposed to SaaS, where you expect less complexity, with AI, you expect more complexity, but streamlined and better outcome. So it seems like AI gives you already from the start, like it gives you notion of you're not going to need to add context. And then, okay, that's work up front. So maybe I can outsource that work to someone else or to the vendor itself. And this is a big change. I think generally SaaS ain't dead in that traditional sense. I think you're going to need, especially bigger platforms, like which are systems of record, like they actually hold the context. You can see ClickUp, what they did with, they added these super agents to ClickUp. Makes sense. Like you're already in that ecosystem in the environment of ClickUp. So now you have an agent that can work in that. It has all the context. I can see a lot of SaaS vendors doing the same, but not like point solutions. Task management app is going to have a hard time, or like time tracking is going to have a hard time competing. But that doesn't mean there's going to be a significant churn on the because of an AI counterpart or the ability of the vendor to build it yourself, because you could have built it yourself anyways so far. Like anyone can build a time tracking solution. You really don't need a very complicated architecture for that. And still people buy them and they use them. And I think generally it's things are not going to change on that side that much. It's just that like certain solutions are going to dominate more mind share and market share more. So I could see it impacting growth rates, but not in a way where it's like a wave of churn, but rather less demand for the SaaS vendors.
What about using AI? What do you hear from your colleagues, vendors that come to the event, speakers? What do you hear and see in regards to AI replacing workforce? I've seen a lot of examples because I'm in this world where companies try to replace SDRs, or maybe they cut the number of SDRs, or maybe they just switch around how the GTM team looks like actually. And obviously agencies, I think, are on the peak of that efficiency with having GTM engineers running outbound plays and then potentially having SDRs on top of that. But what do you hear in that regard from companies that you work with?
SDRs are cooked. But in all honesty, SDRs that all they do are tracking lambless sequences and hey-reach sequences or whatever people use these days. I don't think that's a valuable skill. I think valuable skill is if you as an SDR can manage these tools in a more like a GTM engineering role, where you can plug them together, have it work for you, and also use your own sales capacity and use your own sales brain to actually get to these leads. I feel like countless times when I told people like you can reach out to this person with a thoughtful message that you already have in mind. You don't need to do 50-step sequence, or you can get a referral. You can have friends in close vicinity to the lead that you have. That's every time I say that, people say no, then say, oh, yeah, that's great. And then like they do absolutely opposite to that. And I think like those kind of SDRs that just rely on spraying outbound sequences, agencies, and it's not even that the AI is going to replace them. You pointed it correctly. Agencies replace them because one SDR in an agency can handle multiple companies, multiple tools, and then like basically you don't need a lot of brains to do that. If it's an outbound like automated cadence, like it never had sense. Now it makes absolutely no sense for me. Like I did that job and it's just it's a poor waste. It's a waste of time, especially waste of sales brain. I think there is something about being a junior sales where you need to manage yourself, your expectations, and you build a business acumen and build a book of business as well. But I generally would love to see these people more in real life and actually on events and in different settings where they create environments for themselves or actually use other people's environments to do that. Like, for example, if I want to get to Stefan, I need to be friends with Maria and Alex and this guy and that guy. And I think like this thinking where you strategically think about like, where can I position myself, in which conversation should I be, it on LinkedIn or in real life, it doesn't matter really. And then getting to that end goal, that's where I think like good SDRs will land on. And I hope it creates a generation of salesmen and women that are really not annoying, but rather like very useful. There is always an annoying part to our job, but doesn't need to be that annoying when you're just dishing out, hey Stefan, I liked your LinkedIn post about X, why don't we do Y? I mean, I get these things. I can show you. Like I get these things all day, and it's just was maybe on a side note. There is one outbound cadence that I almost bought from recently, and it's a guy who is doing like influencer. They're basically managing LinkedIn for people, and he did like a mental map, whatever, of all the topics I talk about. I don't know if that's AI generated or what, but it was really good. Actually, I clicked on the PDF, I looked at the map, and I was like, yeah, that kind of sounds right. It was one thing that it piqued my interest was like, okay, are those all the topics I'm talking about? And then I immediately started thinking about who else cares about these topics. Is it my core audience or not? And that was like the exact intention, what he wanted me to do. And I think this kind of stuff, when you're doing pure outbound, like he did a good research, and he piqued my interest in like asking more questions than answering themselves. So that's the thing, good outbound.
I love that. That's a good insight. And I agree with you 100%. When it comes to what's going to happen with specifically the SDR role, I think AI threatens this role more than others. And from what I've seen, like SDRs are going back to the roots of like just cold calling, networking, being on conferences, creating actual connections with people and selling it that way, where like either agencies or GTM engineers who are hired by the company, or like RevOps, it really depends on what the company calls the function, is going to be essentially generating leads to an extent, which is going to be, I think, 60 or 70% of all the lead flow that the company is getting. And then the SDRs, whether they're going to be just SDRs or full cycle sellers, are going to be picking up those and then doing their own outbound very strategically, just like you pointed out, I think perfectly. And so that, I think, is what's going to happen over the next 3 to 5-ish years. Depends on how quickly AI gets adopted. And when I say AI, honestly, these processes rather than AI, it's not like we're going to have this robotic person in the cloud doing outreach on our behalf. It's more like the tools and processes that, honestly, I see agencies really pushing. I'm doing that myself as well. We have GTM engineers who are running campaigns, and then we have SDRs on top who are calling the leads and doing some outbound. But I think that's more efficient and saves a lot of money. And yeah, I tend to agree with you there. And is there any other role that you see that might get threatened by AI other than, for example, SDRs?
Software development.
Oh yeah, I mean, for sure.
It's like junior software development, and that's what I hear people talking. It's not like that we have, for example, at SaaStanak, we have a lot of design need and like front end development, which, I mean, currently it's easier than ever to spin up. What we need are usually landing pages, and you could have done it without AI as well, very easy. But now like the iterations are much faster. We still have a designer on board, and I think actually hired a new one. We didn't have a designer on board. We kind of managed it ourselves, but hired a designer. Why? Because taste matters. And I think if you open up Twitter and see what people are talking about, and I couldn't agree more with this notion of, if you can actually position your brand in a very tasteful manner, where like you have a certain design style or like content style, etc., like something that people can recognize, I think you can replicate it by AI. But if you're the unique one to do it, like people will just copy the original. So I generally think AI, it's already been said before, but it increases the ability of low performing, let's say, employees or staff. In essence, the high performing employees and staff use it the best, so increases efficiency for them, and generally becomes a very good optics for us to see what's actually useful. And I think like SDRs never been really useful in this capacity, where they are people who stand behind the automated email. That's really not useful use of anyone's time. I think it was just poised to automate itself, like regardless of AI. And software engineering, on the other hand, like when it comes to like let's say non-critical roles or software engineers that are not really solving any problems but rather dishing out the same things, I think AI is right to accept it, and I think to change it. But I think also the process has changed where SDR to GTM engineer right now seems like there is more need than ever. And then on software development side, prompt engineers and people who are software developers actually using more AI syntax than coding. Why not? Like these things seems like just a recursive thing where it's not we just out of need of people are just repurposing themselves in different roles. And that's, for me, sounds positive. Like we're getting rid of like code monkeys and making people dish out products faster and better.
Exactly.
Great.
Exactly. And getting rid of like, how did you call them?
Code monkeys.
Code monkeys.
Yeah, I'm not a developer, but generally what I feel is, what's the point of a coding interview if you need to like write syntax? That's not a coding or programming in general. I'm not a programmer. My brother is, and the friend group I have, programmers, those are thinkers. They're not writers. And I think like generally for them, it's a new renaissance because they can think faster, create products clearer. Recently, like the other day, I did like a little bit of a mapped out all the founders I know, created the project with Cloud Code. It's like magic, and I love that. I love the fact that I can do that without any programming knowledge. But that just raises the bar higher for people who actually build stuff that are very useful and makes them even more useful to the society and the industry as a whole.
Agreed. Amazing. And so out of all of the people that you've had a chance to talk with, to learn from, what is the best piece of advice that somebody gave you, either when it came to business or running a good event?
It's a good question. I always joke around with it ain't over until it's over. And I think everyone in sales knows that when you're very happy about the call, it seems like you got a verbal, but the agreement's not signed. It's not over until it's over. I think like this is a very funny lesson that you always learn in sales, but you learn it in business as well, where like all of the commitments you have, be it on your side or the partner side, it seems like until it's formalized, it's not really happening. And then, I don't know, like there are these catchphrases that usually come to my mind. And right now, when you ask me, I have no idea which ones, but generally, like, things take time. And I felt like when I started SaaStanak, I had no idea it's going to grow to this size. But now thinking back, like I feel like could have done it even more sooner if I knew like this curse of knowledge, right? And if I knew things that I know today. But now I'm also reframing my mind when I'm not happy with some things, how they're run or like what's shaping up. I'm reframing my mind and thinking, oh, this is going to be the point in like next couple of years when I go back and I say, hey, if I knew what I know now, I would do this. So yeah, generally things take time and I don't think you need to rush a lot. Maybe that's a side note, but I've been pretty anxious about like reading Twitter and everyone saying you need to do this not to end up in permanent underclass or whatever. And these things I think are like generally stupid things to keep your mind occupied on. Like even if you're an SDR right now and you're thinking, how do I get to this AE level? And then you see someone that asshole that organizes events and he escaped the SDR AE rat race, like don't get discouraged because these things, like these relationships compound over time. I think generally as a salesperson, it comes and goes. You rarely keep a really close, especially if you do a lot of sales, really keep a really close account of who are the people you sold to, but they come back. And I can tell you a lot of this point for me, like a lot of people I sold to in the past, I hear about them and I think, oh, I had a chat with this guy. And then you get a lot of this context that is stored in your brain that can help you move further. So I think just be patient. Things will happen as long as you actually put in the work. And putting the work doesn't mean waking up at 10 a.m. and sending sequences. I think generally it means like being strategic about yourself, your career, and the people you're reaching out to, because everyone has things to do and their motives. And I think like how can you be part of that? Their agenda, I think, is more bigger question than like how to send 500 emails.
I think I got a better response from you from your own experience rather than getting an advice from somebody else. And I can, just on a personal note, very much relate to every single word that you said. I've been running my business for the last 4 years, of very similar trajectory and very similar insights as well, which is takes time. And if I only knew the things that I know today, it would have been so much faster. And honestly, like, I'm investing a lot in my education and like going to places where I can just take those next leaps and learn faster, which is going to get me to the next level faster. But to your point, I think that it just takes time and patience. It's not going to happen overnight. What about, like, why would somebody want, so let's say that we have people on the fence here on the podcast and they're considering to be a part of SaaStanak this year. Give us the pitch. Give us why would somebody want to come over to Šibenik this May?
Yeah, May 25th to 27th. The short version is we gather the most interesting people in SaaS in a vacation resort. So that's the short version. The longer version is, if you ever been to an event where you're annoyed by constant stream of booths and like useless talks, we're trying to do something different. I cannot guarantee we're the best of the best, or like we do certain things better than others. Yeah, I think so. But generally, we try to create a friendly, inviting community that actually wants to hang out. And one anecdote that I always share is, because we're hosting this event in a vacation resort, we had a party in a church. It's a church venue on the vacation resort, so it's not a real church. And I was coming back from the party to the hotel. It's like a 5-minute walk. And on the terrace of the hotel, I saw 15 people arguing about like best outbound tool, like over a bottle of wine at 2 a.m. And I was like, this is the group that actually cares about their work. I don't think you need to necessarily want to argue about outbound tools at 2 a.m., but it's a fun thing to do. Like, I had this revelation when I started doing meetups. Like, I can actually talk about topics that I care about. Like, this is my daily job, is like looking at these tools and looking at all of this stuff, and it frustrates me. And then sometimes it's great. And I would like to share these ups and downs with someone. So meetup served that purpose for me. And now on the conference in Šibenik, I have 300 people I can share that with me, and this year 500. So I'm actually like in a bigger and more proficient group of people that can help me. And on the other hand, I can also relate with them. I think the big part is about going somewhere, conference, event, whatever, is like this question of am I gonna find my people? And I can definitely confidently say that if you're the type of person that actually enjoys their work and wants to share that, you'll definitely gonna find your people at SaaStanak.
Beautiful, man. I really loved that we did this finally. I enjoyed this conversation.
Likewise.
So many things, and it would be awesome to repeat this. In order to wrap it up, where can people find you and where can they apply for SaaStanak?
Yeah, so I'm on LinkedIn. You can follow me there. I regularly share some content about SaaStanak and sometimes even some smart stuff that's not promotional. But also follow SaaStanak at Instagram. We have a TikTok as well now, and yeah, I gave it to my intern. No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, we have a YouTube channel with a lot of talks that we had from last year. So if you're interested in like how the talks work and what are the topics covered, and of course SaaStanak.com, where all the information is about the conference, SaaStanak.com/2026. If you want to see the last year, then 2025. I urge people to take a look at that. Reach out to us if you need any help. Also, everything is in a vacation resort, but if you need any help with other reservations, bookings, information about Šibenik, we offer like small booklets for people who fly into Split, for example. So like a little bit of tourism on the side, you can always reach out to us.
That's awesome. All right. For everybody who would like to check out SaaStanak, I will probably get a discount code for my community and my followers, and check that out in the description. And until SaaStanak, Leo, this was a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. I'll see you on LinkedIn and around. Hopefully we'll get a chance to catch up before May. And then, yeah, thanks for coming on.
Well, thank you. I'm in Belgrade in February. So let's catch up then. Yes. And of course, for the community, big thank you for SDR Hire community, honestly, because I think a lot of our Belgrade and niche events went really well because of your support. And I hope to see more of you in Šibenik because it's a vacation resort. We have a beach club party, man. Come on. Is there anything else I need to say? And Stefan is going to be there. Exactly. That's it.
Exactly. We're going to get people over there. All right. Great chatting with you. I'll talk to you later.
See you. Thank you.